Hot stove conversations about baseball, history, football, and current events that may leave you saying there's more to consider. Now, here's your host, Jack Moore.
Christian Adolph Sonny Jurgensen III, born August 23rd, 1934, passed away today, February 6th, 2026. Welcome to More to Consider. This is a show that I've certainly thought about for some time. There will be a time I have done a lot of shows on the Washington Redskins, and growing up 70 miles from D.C., going to games as early as when I was 6 years of age, and the impact being a fan of Sonny Jurgensen had on me growing up. So for some period of time, I've been thinking, he could very well pass away at any time. He's 91 years of age. When he turned 91 last August, I began to think about there will become a time, and what would I do, and what would I say, and what would the show be about? What would I say in a show? Today, I received a lot of text messages from friends. This is how much Sonny Jurgensen meant to me, that people that mean a lot to me were texting, "Hey, sorry about your loss. Sorry about my loss." And it didn't register at first. Then I saw Sonny mentioned in it, and I'm like, okay, so he must have passed away. So immediately, and I go on the air or onto YouTube and start listening to people discuss his passing. I have a friend of mine in talk radio that I met up with at Redskin camp. Well, it was still the Redskins, so it was pre-COVID. It was 2019 was the last season. I think that's the year, actually. So I'm in Richmond, where the Redskins trained for summer camp, and this buddy of mine was well connected. He was a radio guy, and I want to say this: during that time, I was hanging around with these people that were in media. I had a chance to first talk to Rick Doc Walker, and I think this is the beauty of being a fan, growing up in a particular area. So, as a kid, well, I was in my 20s then at the time that Rick was playing, or Doc Walker was playing, but he was over there doing radio, and there came a kind of an end of the show period. I saw him take the headset off, and I knew enough about radio, knew that he was probably off the air. I approached him and could not have met a greater human being than Rick Doc Walker. So was a player with the Redskins, was on the first Super Bowl winning team, the 82 season. And it's like you're a fan. You kind of love a guy from afar, and then you meet him, and he's awesome. So we spent 20 minutes talking. Everybody else had left, so I got a chance to talk to Rick Walker. Then this buddy of mine got me down around into this area with media people, and I got a chance to meet J.P. Finley. What a nice guy he is. And he, of course, teams with Brian Mitchell. I have gone on to make friends with a guy that knows all of these people that worked in the Redskin front office. And Brian Mitchell belongs in the NFL Hall of Fame. I'm off the top of my head, but I think I'm right about this. He's second all time in all-purpose yards in the history of the game. He was mainly a kick returner, both punts and kickoffs. He did play some offense. He did play running back, famously in the body bag game, and I guess that was 1990 against the Eagles. He came in to play quarterback and took the team down the field and got a touchdown drive when they were getting blown out by the Eagles. Another great guy, just super nice guy. And I bring them up because this morning I'm listening to J.P. Finley and I'm listening to Brian Mitchell, and they're having several people on to talk about Sonny Jurgensen, the impact he'd had on their lives. And he has on Larry Michael, who was the main guy, the play-by-play guy for the radio broadcast from 2004 up. And then at one point they had Frank Herzog on, and Frank Herzog had been on the team with Sam Huff and Sonny starting in 1981. Sam Huff had already gone to Hall of Famer as well. University of West Virginia, became famous for playing for, of course, the New York Giants. Cronkite did the little documentary thing on the violent world of Sam Huff, and kind of exposed people to what the violence of pro football was in the early 60s. Then he gets kind of dumped by the Giants onto the Redskins in 64 with Sonny Jurgensen, who gets traded away from the Eagles. So they become, in their words, brothers that they'd never had. So Sam Huff, Sonny Jurgensen are famously best friends and like brothers. So Huff's on the air before Sonny. Sonny's off doing CBS color commentary on TV. And then they come together in the same radio booth with Frank Herzog. That is through the 2003 season. And then Larry Michael basically steps into Frank Herzog's position. And they maintain that crew until Sam Huff reaches a point health-wise he can't do it. He passes away. And I think Sonny's last season was 2018. There was a time with Sonny on the radio that he would not go to away games. He only did home games. Where I'm going with all this is I'm listening to these guys this morning tell stories about Jurgensen. And my producer, Laura, has, with this show that I've thrown together since finding out about the passing, I say thrown together, didn't know it was coming. So I'm doing this show because I wanted to say what this man meant to me and sort of get into the whole question of what are heroes, and is it a healthy thing when you're growing up to, see particular people, to idolize people when you're young and see them as something you would like to be like, you want to be a star quarterback like this guy, or he just means something to you and your family. And when I started listening to these stories, one of the common threads was he was a very decent guy, nice man, and made everyone else feel accepted. And he never sort of put that I'm a Hall of Famer, you're not type of atmosphere at all. So the first time I was ever in his presence, other than being at games and not being too terribly far away from him on the field, and I could tell the story, and I will tell it. And there's no way for you to dispute it, so I'll just say it. Well, let me back all the way up by doing this. I know I'm all over the board here, but my mind's racing with all these thoughts about this history. So here's the bottom line. I grew up in Bowling Green, Virginia. My dad is sheriff. I'm at the sheriff's office when I must be 5+. I don't know exactly how old I am. And there's a guy in there, and I'm drawing up football plays. And my next door neighbor had taught me a lot about the team. We'd have the Monday afternoon paper, the Freelance Star out of Fredericksburg, every Monday. And he would sit with me and point out the players and their numbers. And in some kind of sense, I started to learn to read that way because I was seeing the number, I was seeing the player, I was making the association of what the name looked like. And I know it sounds crazy to sound, but I'm 5.5, 6 years old, and I'm totally into pro football in the Washington Redskins. So I'm at the sheriff's office, and this gentleman comes in and he makes a comment, and I correct him. And my memory, it's so long ago, but my memory is it was something like he said, Sam Huff went to X college university. And I'm like, he actually went to West Virginia. So it's a time pre-internet, somebody has to somebody's got a program or something, and they look it up. And he's like, son of a gun, the kid was right, or I was right about whatever. So he says to my father, that kid needs to go to a game. Everyone in town knew there was a gentleman who had season tickets since 1959. He'd had season tickets since they were in the old Griffith Stadium. They built a new DC stadium in 1960, or they opened it in 61. And he's got season tickets. He's got 4 tickets on about the 45-yard line in what we later refer to as RFK Memorial. So this meant a lot to me when my dad passed, a lot, because I thought about the fact that for the first time, I got to go to a live game when I was 6. On the wall back here, I have a framed picture of Sonny Jurgensen with the ticket. It had a $6 face value. So it's a 45-yard line seat on the home side that had a face value of $6. So that's my first game. They're wearing the plum helmets and the plum jersey like I hung up here for this show. And they have the plum helmet with the spear on it. And I had always sort of loved Lombardi from afar. He was the Green Bay Packer coach. My mom thought he was a great role model. We all just in the house loved Vince Lombardi, even though he's with the Packers. So in February 1969, they announced that he's coming to Washington. And I'm like, oh my gosh, we're going to have Vince Lombardi as coach. And I'm 7, but I've never been so excited. I'm just shy of 7. I've never been so excited in my life. So we get into the season. They've had 15 straight losing seasons. they had a couple seasons where they were 500, but everything was not a winning season in 15 seasons since 1955. So he comes in and they go 7-5-2. And I didn't realize this. I've mentioned it on shows. I didn't realize this until I went to RFK, which was in the latter stages of demolition, or it's in some stage of demolition a couple of years ago. And they were selling seats out. They were selling the actual seats. So they'd pull the seats from the stadium. They're in a parking lot beside the stadium. So I got to take pictures of it. It's all rusted out. You can see it's fallen in almost. And I buy these 2 seats. And this is where I meet the gentleman that I've done a show with who had worked in the front office. And we're talking. And he's like, so when was your first game? I said, my first game over there in that stadium was when I was 6. He goes, get out of here. I said, yeah, 1968. Are you kidding? I said, yeah. And I said, matter of fact, I came back in 69 and saw Coach Lombardi coach. And literally while I'm standing there, I said, man, something just struck me. And he goes, what's that? I said, October 12th, 69. And right also back here behind me is Jurgensen signed the program cover from that game. And I'm including in the pictures a day that I was with Jurgensen in 08 at a show, autograph show in Chantilly, Virginia, outside of DC, Northern Virginia, where he signed it. So he signed that program cover. And while I'm standing there with the guy, I said, it just dawned on me. And he said, what's that? I said, I was at the very first game that the Washington Redskins played in RFK Stadium. It was the same stadium, but Bobby Kennedy's killed in June of 68. In January of 69, they decide to name the stadium Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium. It was DC Stadium. So my ticket up here from 1968 says DC Stadium. There is no RFK Stadium yet. RFK had already been assassinated by the time I went to my first game, but they had not yet named the stadium. Another story I heard was when JFK was killed in 1963, they wanted to rush in front and name it John F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium, but Philadelphia literally beat them to it, and that became JFK Stadium was in Philadelphia. So now that Bobby Kennedy's killed, they decide to name it Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium. So the first time they ever played, so this is another point of the history, back when it was dual purpose stadiums and the Washington Senators played in Washington with the Redskins, they would give 3 weeks at the opening of the NFL season. They would schedule it that the Redskins were not playing at home to get the Senators out. So the Senators finished the season the last days of September. Then they clear everything out. Baseball season's over. So Washington opened the 69 season in New Orleans. Then they went to Cleveland, and then they went to San Francisco. They won, they lost, and they tied. So they were 1-1-1 coming into week 4 against the Cardinals. And that's the game I was there. So this is my story about, you're not going to be able to dispute it. But if you go back and if you were to look at where the RFK Stadium sets up relative to, north, south, east, west, like if you put a compass on it, this is what I could say that I think would validate my story. And I'm wearing a Jurgensen jersey today. I'm wearing the 1974 Mitchell and Ness throwback jersey, which is made with all the same design of the 1974 jersey. So I wore a little number 9 jersey that my mom found me, back in that time. If anything had number 9 on it, they would buy it for me. And I was 6 or now 7 in 69. So we would get there very early. The gentleman that had the season tickets for the number of years, he always wanted to be there early. We didn't tailgate, but we went straight into the stadium. And what would always happen in my early experiences, Jurgensen would come out with, now also passed away, another guy I loved as a kid was Len Hauss, Hauss. He was a center who played fullback in college, but he was a center out of the University of Georgia. Very athletic center. Back then he's 6'2", 235 playing center. But Len Hauss and Jurgensen would come out and warm up together, just like this. No shoulder pads, game pants, jersey pulled over, and they'd come out there and run around. And Sonny would throw passes to Len Hauss, and Len Hauss would do sort of some quasi stretching, and nobody else had come out yet. And this was year after year I saw this, in those first few years that I was a kid going to games. So they're out there warming up. And I went from our seats, I don't know, 20 some odd rows back, I guess, from ground level, maybe 30. And I start working my way down to ground level, getting as close as I can get, because there's really nobody there. So I'm not, moving anybody around. There's no usher telling me, kid, get out of here. So 1:00 start, maybe 1:15. I think it's 12 o'clock. It's probably 12:15 at most. And I get as close down to the field as I can get. So I'm not terribly far from the benches on the sideline. We're on the Washington Redskin home side. So I just yell out, Sonny. I'm 7. And I go, Sonny. And what I'll never forget is I'm waving. I'm 7. I'm like, Sonny, it's me. And this is what I know. If you looked it up, you'd probably find that on a bright sunny day in October, the sun would have been up over the home side bench on that side. Because what I'll never forget is he heard me, and he's heading in the way that the field was laid out. If you were on the home side and you looked out at the field, down to your left was the old home dugout where the Redskins dressed. It was the home dugout for the baseball field, and it's where the Redskins were. So he is going from right to left in front of me. He's crossing me, heading back to the clubhouse to put on the shoulder pads or whatever. So when I yell at, hey, Sonny, he does this. He covers his eyes from the sun, and then he points at me and he waves and he goes in. And that is something I'm telling you now, 55 plus years ago, I saw that and I'll never forget it. And it meant the world to me. He pointed and he waved at me because he heard me yell his name. There's nobody in the stadium hardly, though. So it wasn't like there was tons of people and it was hard for him to identify hey, some kid's yelling. Okay, hey. But he covered, pointed, waved. So the other thing about that, the Lombardi trophy and all the rest, I was at that game that day and I saw Vince Lombardi live and in person, which I'll never forget. He had the white dress shirt on. He had the coach's shoes on and the dress slacks. There he was. And how close I got to him when I got down, tried to get as close to the field as I could, 150, 200 feet away, but I saw him. I saw Vince Lombardi. And I'll tell you this, my mother worked in the school system. So the next September 3rd, 1970, when he passed away, I was at the swimming pool with the gentleman that had the season tickets. It was a community swimming pool we went to. And I saw him in the summer, and I heard him talking to my dad. And I don't think he really wanted me to hear it. And he said, I was totally unaware at that age. He's like, yeah, it's not really looking good. I think it's cancer, blah, blah. So they were talking about Lombardi. And he had colon cancer, and that's what he passed from. So I don't know it. It's like July. And he's talking about he won't be at camp when they break camp and they go to Pennsylvania to Dickinson College and all. He's not going to be there in Carlisle. He's, and I'm thinking, he'll recover. I mean, what could ever get Vince Lombardi? So then I'm at school in the 3rd grade, and my mom tells, as if it's a different era. There's not like a lot of media around, or I mean, it's not like we have a lot of sources of information. But she tells my 3rd grade teacher, Ms. Rowe, whatever you do, don't let Jack get anywhere near finding this out. Keep him away from whatever. I mean, it's not like television around the 3rd grade then, but I don't hear anything. So she can break it to me that evening. And I can still remember I cried from the night she told me, the afternoon she told me, until the next morning. And I was dysfunctional the next day as well. And when I look back at it, I was 7. But I love Sonny Jurgensen. I love Lombardi from afar. Like I said, now he's our coach, and I'm dreaming Super Bowls, from now until, the horizon. We'll just win Super Bowls. And now he's gone. So he had turned the team around. They go 6-8 under Bill Austin, who was an assistant with him with the Packers and an assistant with the Redskins for Lombardi. And they go 6-8, and it kind of slides backwards again. And they get George Allen. So then George Allen comes in. One of the first things he does is he goes out and gets really journeyman quarterback Billy Kilmer. Billy Kilmer was a very great athlete, baseball prospect. He was a first-round pick with the 49ers as a runner that could also play quarterback. So in San Francisco, under Red Hickey, when they first got there, they put the shotgun in. They had John Brody. I think it was Mora was the name of the other quarterback, and Kilmer, and they were just rotating them through. And Kilmer was the guy that was sort of the running quarterback. And if you know the famous, who just passed away last year, Jim Marshall's wrong way run, The person that fumbled the ball was Billy Kilmer. So Billy Kilmer fumbled it. Marshall got disoriented and picked up the ball and was thinking he was heading towards the scoring end zone. He's heading towards his own, gets into the end zone, and then throws the ball, which created a safety. And I got a chance to meet Walt Rock, who was an offensive lineman. He lives here in Williamsburg, Virginia. And I got a chance to meet him. He's famously chasing Jim Marshall down the field. And when I got the chance to meet him and talk to him, one of the things he said, we were chasing him because we didn't know if he was going to realize it and all of a sudden start heading back the correct direction, and then we'd have to tackle him. So we're running down the field, and you can see on the films, NFL Film still has it out there, the wrong way run of Jim Marshall. They're clapping kind of behind him as he tosses the ball, because now once he throws it out of bounds, it's a safety and there's nothing else that can be done. And now the realization striking him that he went the wrong direction. But Billy Kilmer is actually the person who caught a pass and fumbles. So Kilmer ends up in New Orleans. When the New Orleans Saints becomes an expansion team, what was history then? And by the way, I want to kind of reach out to Upton Bell about this too. Upton Bell, that I had on the show, who was the youngest general manager in NFL history, and also the son of Burt Bell, who was the commissioner, where we don't have the same NFL today if Burt Bell isn't the commissioner in the 50s. The draft, the sudden death, the alignment of games, the divisional play, which comes about from this, the East-West playing for a championship game, all this stuff. Well, I think that actually happened a little bit earlier, but Burt Bell was instrumental in a lot of what we think of today as commonplace views of the NFL and what's done. So I'd really like to talk to him about this as well. But anyway, what was common practice then is when there was an expansion team, each team could then protect X number of players. And I'm talking in the early 60s, rosters were like 33 players. They may have expanded to close to 40 by then. And I've watched it climb. It was a 40-man roster, then a 45, then a 50, 53. They've gone through periods where you can have a third quarterback, but that's all it can be is a third. They've gone through all these different attempts to expand rosters and also protect certain positions, namely quarterback. So back then in that period in the 60s, I'm guessing 37-ish was about where they had reached at that point. And what every team had to do, they were given a number of protected players that they could protect, and everybody else was fair game. So Jim Taylor ended up with the Saints. I think Paul Hornung ended up with the Saints. So there's a lot of old veterans who, their best days are long gone, that end up in New Orleans as the expansion team because they were uncovered. Billy Kilmer was one of those. So he gets a fresh start in New Orleans. Not good. Of course, it's an expansion team. They lose a lot. And he's known as a stand-up guy. I think he's a warrior, clearly. And he comes to Washington. So in 1971, when George Allen shows up, I'm excited. I'm old enough to know, I'm approaching, what am I, 9 then? I'm 9 years old. I'm thinking, all right, Lombardi died tragically. I miss him. I wish he was the coach. But now this Allen guy's in. He's got a track record of being the defensive coordinator with the 63 Bears. He's actually given the game ball. If I'm not mistaken, I think he was actually carried off on everybody's shoulders, and he was the defensive coordinator, kind of unheard of at the time. It probably until Buddy Ryan has the same thing happen after the 85 Super Bowl, but he is highly recognized as one of the top special teams guys and defensive guys. And he's with the Rams. There's an ugliness there in Los Angeles that leads to him being out. So Washington comes out and gets him. He goes out and gets Billy Kilmer. And everyone in town knows that Billy Kilmer is the insurance policy to Sonny Jurgensen's stardom. And then the last preseason game, I believe it was against the Dolphins, Jurgensen's thrown down on his left shoulder and separates his shoulder. So Kilmer starts the season. They start the season 5-0. So Kilmer's winning. They end up 9-4-1. So you can see the second half of the year wasn't the first half of the year. Sonny comes back late in the season and gets thrown on his shoulder again against the Eagles. And it's kind of like, okay, this season's pretty much done. You can go back on YouTube and see the 1971, I think it was next to last game when they played the Rams, and they had to play the Rams to pretty much make the playoffs, and they beat the Rams in L.A. And at the opening of the show, it's Howard Cosell, it's Don Meredith. Gifford's on there, I think, by that time, but They talked to Allen, and Meredith makes a big point of, we're going to probably see some Sonny Jurgensen today. You don't. Kilmer finishes the game. They get in the playoffs. They play the 49ers. They lose. Season's over. So a lot's been made about the 72 season, where the Redskins make the Super Bowl. And now get back to Sonny and what I went through as a fan. I'm upset at that point in life that Sonny's not the starter. It was like, well, it was his job to gain back with health. And he really wasn't healthy the rest of 71. He really wasn't, I'm sure. So when Kilmer's in there, I'm rooting for him. I'm like, but Sonny's my guy. Sonny's a quarterback. He should be the quarterback. And I know there's things that stick in my mind. I'd positively be sure I'm right about this. One of the things Jurgensen claimed is, if he had had Lombardi his whole career, he would have been a different person. He was known to be pretty heavy on the party scene, maybe not in the best shape. And there's a famous Lombardi documentary where Jurgensen's asked, and he says, first meeting I have with Lombardi looks across the table at him and says, young man, I've heard a lot about you, some good, some bad. None of that really matters to me now. Now you just be Sonny Jurgensen. You don't have to be Bart Starr, his famous quarterback with 5 championships and great. You don't have to be any of those guys. You just be you. And he goes, I kind of looked at him, and he goes, and we're going to win. And he goes, I kind of looked at him and he said, sir. And he goes, that's it. And he goes, okay. And he goes, I walked out. So he goes, a lot of people ask me about my weight. He was always listed between 5'11" and 6 foot, depending on what year of the program. He was always 5'11" or 6 feet. And he was always listed at 203 pounds when people thought he might have weighed 240 or he might have weighed 230. He was definitely well over 203 pounds. But he said he never really said anything to me about my weight. He was first coach that didn't say lose weight or whatever. He goes, but then I understood why. Once we got to camp, he ran me to death. And then he goes, and I was like, okay, I get it. He didn't have to say anything about getting better shape. It's going to happen. If you're going to play for this guy, you're going to be in better shape. So he does. It's easily recognizable when you see him in 69. He's not the same guy. He is a better athlete as far as conditioning. There's no doubt. So he leads the NFL in passing in 69. And Vince Lombardi famously said, best pure passer I've ever seen. Courageous guy, played hurt, played whenever we had to have him play. And by the way, in 68, he had broken ribs and had one of his worst years. And in 67, he had the most incredibly record-setting year he could have ever had, which I want to touch on real quick. I know I'm all over the map, but back to 67. In that year, he set the record for attempts, completions, and yards, 37-47. 37-47 as yardage in 67 in a 14-game season is just unheard of. He threw like 31 touchdowns. In that season, Charlie Taylor's number 1 in receptions. Jerry Smith is number 2, the tight end. And number 4 is Bobby Mitchell. So think about that. In all receptions from top to bottom within the league, 1, 2, and 4 were on the same team. 1, 2, and 4 were all playing together with that quarterback. He throws the ball 508 times, 288 completions for those yards, and throws the touchdowns. Wow. Okay. So now 68, he's injured a lot. 69, here comes Lombardi. So then 70, it's an awful season, the Bill Austin season. So now back to 71, Allen comes in, Sonny gets hurt, separated shoulder, never quite the same. So I'm watching a preseason game, and my memory was it was Pat Summerall, who I absolutely love. I mean, Pat Summerall is one of my all-time favorite people. Growing up in America, NFL football, Pat Summerall, especially with the years of Madden, but Tommy Brookshire too. Tom Brookshire, great. And I'm old guy, so some of you younger people, if you're watching this, you're kind of like, I don't know who the hell these people are talking about. Pat Summerall was a kicker with the Giants, not a superstar player, made some famous kicks, but he was just a beautiful soul and a great human being that, he went through alcoholism. He had a lot to do with cleaning up Mickey Mantle's life. He went to the Betty Ford Clinic. He suggested to Mickey Mantle to get clean. There's a lot of stories that when Michael Irvin was on the outs with the media life. This is a great story. Michael Irvin said, I went to Pat Summerall. How beautiful is this? I went to Pat Summerall, said, could you help me get back? He'd gone through some off the field, off the booth stuff. And Summerall's like, are you cleaned up? Are you this or you that? And he goes, yes, sir. He goes, okay, I'm going to go to Fox and I'm going to say to hire you. And if you screw up, fire me. And he's like, what kind of man says I'll risk my career over you? You tell me. So Pat Summerall, a man from a different era for sure, they're separated by a number of years, stood up for Michael Irvin. Said, you're good, right? We're going to make this work. Yeah, okay, then I'm going to go and I'm going to stand up for you. So that's Pat Summerall. So Pat Summerall's on the sideline in 1972. Team's out on the field warming up. Jurgensen's wearing that jersey right there, that white jersey with that trim. And he and Kilmer are there on the field together. And Summerall's like, Sonny, he's flat, he's got the 6'8" pack. He's really in shape. It's obvious. And he said, man, he goes, well, hurt my shoulder last year. I wanted to get in that same kind of shape again that I've been in before. He's 38 years of age in August that year. And Kilmer looks like Kilmer. Kilmer's always a really good athlete. He wasn't the most beautiful passer and all that, but he was a tough guy. Now, of course, the other big thing with Kilmer is he's in a car accident in 1962. I believe it was late 62 because 63, I believe, was the year he missed. His legs are crushed. He's in like a sports car. There's an accident and his legs are totally destroyed. And he's told that amputation's a possibility. He's like, you're not taking my legs. Well, you'll never play again. And he does. He sits out one entire season. He goes through rehabilitation, a massive amount of work, and he plays again. He plays again from 63 through 78. So he plays another 15 years after having this devastating injury in a car accident. So anyway, they're two standing out there. And my memory was Summerall sort of like, Sonny, best shape you've ever been in? Yep, ready to go. So George Allen puts out on the street or he puts out with the press, hey, it's a straight up quarterback competition. I came here, Sonny was a starter. Sonny got hurt. Billy took us to the playoffs. Let him play it out. Let's do it. And my memory is, and anybody can find this, look it up. I'm almost positive of this. Stuff sticks in my head. When the summer was complete, Sonny had completed 62% of his passes for the summer. And back then, it was still 6 preseason games, 6. Then it eventually went to 4, and now it's 2. But back then, you had 6 preseason games and 14 regular season games. It's before 78 when it goes to 16 regular season games. And my memory is that's when it got cut to 4 preseason. But it's 6 then. So in the 6 games, like Kilmer plays the first half, Sonny plays the second half. It could be argued Sonny's throwing against guys that are dishwashers later. They're not the same guys that'll be on the season on the field during the season. I don't remember a flip-flop. I think Kilmer always started the first half. Sonny played the second half, maybe against more the third and fourth tier guys. But my memory, maybe Sonny started one of those games or 2 of them. But Kilmer completes 47. Now, when I say Sonny completed 62, you got to remember the record then was Sammy Ball 70. Back when Sammy Ball was playing, anybody over 60 then was considered way upper tier for completion percentage. 60 plus was not something you really saw a lot of. And he completes 62%. My memory is Kilmer was below 50, put it that way. Season starts, Kilmer's a starter. And I remember a little bit of tension among people I knew because we were Sonny fans. What the hell? Like you go to camp, you say, Jurgensen's in the best shape he's ever been in. And blah, blah, blah. Kilmer starts. They win week 2. Then there's week 3. Very famous game. You can find it on YouTube. I'm watching the game. Kilmer throws 3 touchdowns against the Patriots, newly with Jim Plunkett. So, it's that kind of era. It's Plunkett as a quarterback. Fataha was a wide receiver also from Stanford. And they're like a starting over team or 15th trying to rebuild of that, still relatively young franchise because they're an old AFL team. It's less than 15 years. But they're starting over. They're not considered a big-time team. They win the game 24-23. Patriots win 24-23. And Kilmer, like I said, has thrown the 3 touchdowns. He didn't have a bad game. But there's a point in the game. One of the things I'd said earlier that Allen was great at was finding special teams freaks, guys that were really good at certain things. And Bill Malachak was a wide receiver. I think he came from Detroit. He's a wide receiver that's the 5th guy on the depth charts, I guess. He doesn't catch a lot of passes, but he's athletic and all this. But he has a knack for something, and that's blocking punts. So Allen goes out and gets him, puts him on. Bob Renee was another guy I remember always had a great history with the Redskins as a special team. Pete Wysocki. Dallas Hickman was a 6'6" guy named Dallas that was a great special team. They had tons of great special teams. And then the biggest was Rusty Tillman, who goes on to be a special teams coach. So they have these great special teams guys. And Malinchak has this incredible knack for blocking punts. He just blocks a bunch. So he blocks a punt. And my memory was it was Bob Renee with him that are both scrambling towards the back of the end zone. And they're trying to get to the ball before it crosses the end line. And I think they do. This was Zapruder film analyzed. Everybody went down to the line and they stopped the frame. It appears it's possible, but it's not without question. It's possible they land on the ball before it crosses the line, meaning touchdown, but they don't get it. So they get 2 points instead of the touchdown. That becomes the margin of loss. They lose 24-23. So instead of getting the touchdown, they only get the 2 points and then they don't. And my memory was Kurt Knight got to line up to kick a field goal to win it and misses. So he misses. We lose by a point. And then the headlines all week are, and this is the week I'm going to my game of the year. I go to a game each year at that point. The headline is Redskins Eagles this week in Washington and Sonny starting. And I mean, part of me thought, man, Kilmer didn't deserve that. I mean, he didn't play poorly. So he's like, we're going to change things up. Sonny's in. So this is another one of those I keep saying I'll never forget. I'm in the stadium. Now I'm 10. So I've been going to games 68, 69, 70, 71. Now it's 72, my 5th year of going to a home game. And they're playing the Eagles. They're 2-1. This is a Super Bowl season. And they're going through, you have to be in RFK. Please in the comments, if any of you have ever been in RFK Stadium, and I know I'm old man, get off my lawn. I'm telling stories about the past. But if you ever have been in stadiums and you experience Robert F. Kennedy Memorial Stadium, you know it's different than anything else. The place would, as people say, literally shake. You'd feel like the foundation was going to break and you were going to go tumbling to the earth. I mean, it was that kind of place. I mean, I would love to know what the decimal levels were that people reached because it was an incredibly loud place. And it was a warm place. So just great people, it was a lot of DC people, but certainly a lot of Washington and Maryland people, maybe some Pennsylvania, some North Carolina. People would come from North Carolina. It was because of the setup in the 50s with the first TV, and it was being televised in the South. They were kind of the South's team. The Washington Redskins were throughout the South. Jurgensen mentioned that when he got traded, that he'd grown up in Wilmington, North Carolina. That was his team because that's all anybody saw was the Redskins. So anyway, they're going through, and there's that PA announcer voice, got a kind of echo to it, and he's going through the lineup. And I don't remember the exact sequence, except my memory was it came to Charlie Taylor next before Jurgensen. And I'm in that crowd. I'm 10 years old. I would stand on the seat. When I was really young, I would stand on the seat. But if I really wanted to see some, I guess at 10, I kind of would still do that. But I would try to get the best look I could. So I'm looking down to my left, down to where they're coming out of that clubhouse area, coming out of the locker room area. And they're on the step. They get announced. They come out. So I could barely hear through the roar. And starting at wide receiver from Arizona State University, Charlie Taylor. And then here comes Charlie Taylor. Then the guy says, and starting at quarterback, and I never heard another word. I never heard anything else. And starting at quarterback, and I saw Sonny step up that step to come out. And starting at quarterback, all hell broke loose. The place starts to shake, and somebody starts dropping ticker tape. It snows like the rest of the game. There's paper dropping from the upper tier, from the upper part of the stadium. It's coming down like snow. And I heard that guy say, and starting at quarterback. And then everything began to rock. And then he comes rolling out there, potbelly. Here comes Sonny. And I guess he was not as much potbelly. Like I said, he was in better shape. But here he comes rolling out. And I never heard another thing from the announcer. It was just an absolute explosion in the stands. So he comes rolling out, throws 3 interceptions in the first half. And I'm thinking he's going to get pulled. Poor Sonny, he gets a shot. Then he comes back and throws a touchdown. They win 14-0. So I'm like, okay. Then my memory is when he beats the Cardinals the next week, it's 33-3. I think it's 33-3. So now, okay, he started against the Eagles, got to win. Start against the Cardinals, got to win. And now they got home against the Cowboys. I'm watching the game on TV. And this is what really matters is they're down 20-10. It's kind of a shootout type of game. Sonny gets the ball, 2 more 80-yard drives. Drives them down, touchdown. And now it's 2017. Drives them down, touchdown. Now it's 24-20. They win. So he beats the Cowboys, the then reigning Super Bowl champion Cowboys, who won Super Bowl VI the year before against the Dolphins. He beats them at home. So then he goes in to Yankee Stadium the next week. So now it's 2 wins, 3 more, 5. They're 5-1. So I think it's week 7. I believe it is. It's right. They're 5-1 and they're going into week 7. So it's his job now. It's Sonny's job. He's going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season, minus an injury. And of course, he throws a 13-yard completion, my memory. I think it was Roy Jefferson. And the story he told later was he turned to the official and he goes, "Why'd you kick me?" And the official said, "Sonny, I was right over here. I don't know what you're talking about." He goes, "Yeah, you kicked me. Somebody kicked me in my ankle." And he's like, "Sonny, I don't know what you're talking about. I was way over here." And he starts to take a step and now he's limping. And he's like, "What the hell?" He tore his Achilles tendon. And basically, from the way he later told it, all he really did was drop back, set, threw the ball, and in doing so, snapped his Achilles tendon. Thought the referee kicked him. Nobody was near him. Otherwise was near him, and he couldn't figure out what was going on. He's done for the year. In one of the documentaries that was done on Jurgensen, this one he did with Steve Sable, he was asked about that Super Bowl, and he said that Allen purposely put him in a room designed for 12 people, like a luxury suite at the stadium, Los Angeles Coliseum, by himself. Wouldn't let him talk to Kilmer, wouldn't let him assist him, wouldn't let him stand on. He's in a cast, and he's been on crutches for some time because of the Achilles tendon tear. But that's how bad the relationship was with George Allen, which is a whole thing I really haven't discussed, kind of peripherally basically, but it's becoming Kilmer's team. So as a kid, I'm going to be straight up honest. I wasn't a big fan of Kilmer because of that. But then years later, I get to see everything else play out. So these people I talked about today, Rick Walker, Brian Mitchell, J.P. Finley doing these shows, having Frank Herzog on, having Larry Michael on. Well, one of the people they had on today, actually it was Grant Paulson's show. He had on Billy Kilmer. And I went and looked through my pictures. I was at the game in 2023, January. It's 2022 season, when the new team, I won't mention their name, was honoring Jurgensen by retiring his number. And I went to that game for that purpose. When I found out, I'm like, I'm going. I'll find a way to get a seat. And I did. I got a great seat for next to nothing on, one of the ones you can go on and throw your credit card information to get the ticket. Got there, parked at the Metro, 1.5 miles from the stadium, walked it in, get there. I'm around a bunch of cool people watching the game. And the person who wanted to be the guy to pull back the veil and unveil his number 9 retirement was Billy Kilmer. Billy Kilmer's the one right beside him. So then I start to hear all the stories through the years. When Kilmer got there in 71, he said he sat with Jurgen and said, "Look, here's what I know. You're the starter. I'm the backup. But Sonny, neither one of us have ever been on a winning team. I think George Allen's going to create a winner. Let's pull from the same end of the rope." And so they decided they were never going to divide the team. They laughed about, during that time, bumper stickers came out. I remember it. I like Sonny. I like Billy. And people were divided on who they liked. And they would ride around together on the way to practice, on their way wherever. And they would see one of the other stickers. And then Billy was like, "Hey, there's an I like Sonny sticker. Watch this." He'd go up and blow the horn. The person would look, and it's Billy Kilmer throwing him the finger. And then Sonny's laughing. Then Sonny would say, "Hey, there's a Billy one. Pull it up, get on around there so I can see." So then when they blow the horn and throw the finger, the fan is, "Oh my God, that's Sonny Jurgensen that just, flipped me off." Or they're just laughing about it because they're together in the car. And then once the fan is shocked to see that player calling him out for having the wrong sticker, then he looks over and the other guy's in the car too. So they had fun with that. And then, of course, I've heard Joe Theismann say many times, one of the things they were in solidarity with in 1974 is they kind of got together and we're both aging. Sonny's 40 that year. Kilmer is, oh my gosh, I think at that time he's 34. I think he was 6 years younger than Sonny. Well, see, he broke his, okay, 4. Now he's probably 4 years younger. So he's probably pushing 36. And they, no, I guess he 35-ish, 35. Let's call it 35-ish. Anyway, they meet, they're talking, and they're like, look, I'm old, you're old. We've both got a lot of playing experience. And let's make sure that we, again, hold the team down together, because the one thing we're in agreement we don't want is that little son of a bitch to play. So, like, and Theismann's laughed about that. He goes, that's one thing they were in solidarity. They didn't want me to play. So, and of course, Theismann runs into a little bit of competition there with Kilmer for a few years, and then eventually wins the job, and then Kilmer retires. Okay. So I want to say that. I listened to Kilmer today, and it was tugging at the heart, because he loved Jurgensen, and they were both in Florida, but one was on the East Coast side, one was on the Gulf Coast side. And he had just 3 weeks ago, he said, run into him or ran over to see him and had lunch. And he goes, I didn't see this being 3 weeks away from his passing. And I could tell in what he was saying, he really loved him like a brother. They really became close. It's an interesting dynamic that both of them were fighting for the same job. Oh, and another thing that they both clearly said, I've seen them both interviewed and say this, Jurgensen and Kilmer years ago would talk about this in interviews, that they would get together after they talked to Allen. And Kilmer was like, Sonny, what did he say? Oh, that's not at all what he told me. Yeah. Well, what did he say to you? Yeah. And then they came to understand that was a mechanism, probably not a lot different than Walsh when he went through the whole thing with Montana and Young. I think he kind of played them against each other to try to get a better result. There are many that say he brought in Young just to make Montana better, piss off Montana because he's worried that his younger quarterback's going to come in and take his job. And what did he do? He won 2 more Super Bowls. So maybe there was something to that. He won 2. The last 2 he won was kind of after Young came in. So there is this argument that Allen was just pulling people's strings. It was more of a, this mental thing of if I can get them at odds with each other, it'll get everybody edgy and they'll play better. So another thing I want to say memorabilia-wise, back here, right back over my hand, is the Sonny Jurgensen, Vince Lombardi program cover from July of 1969. And I had him sign that also in his presence. And I will say this, too, about the program cover from the game at 69. What was funny is I'm standing in a line with the guy from Virginia Beach, and we're this was actually in Richmond. This wasn't the Chantilly. It was in Richmond that I had the program cover. So it's 1999. That picture was signed in 08. At the picture that's going to be posted with this show was from the 08 show. But in 99, I'm at the fairgrounds in Richmond, and I'm standing there beside a guy from Virginia Beach. And he said to me, he goes, my 2 favorite players of all time were number 9, Sonny Jurgensen and Ted. He's older than I am. Ted Williams and Sonny Jurgensen. There's my Ted Williams stuff. So Ted Williams comes up in that conversation. The guy said, I'm looking around at kids. This is 99. I'm looking around at kids here, and I bet half these kids don't even know who Sonny Jurgensen is. So I took the program cover and I said, look what I got for him to sign. He goes, where did you get that? I was like, I was at the game, because it says on it 1969. This is 1999. Well, how old were you? I was 7. So now I'm 37. I was 7. And he's like, I said, yeah, I got it at the game. I've been holding it all these years, and I never throw away anything Redskin paraphernalia wise. So we approach, and that's when I hear him say it. He goes, Mr. Jurgensen, my 2 favorite players were number 9, you and Ted Williams. Well, Ted Williams had famously come to Washington the same time Lombardi did. And I remember seeing this film. You find it on YouTube from the 69 News Network broadcast nightly news in 69. They're like, hey, there's 3 big names coming to D.C. Richard Nixon had just been inaugurated to start his first term. After losing in 60, he won in 68. Lombardi's coming to town. So literally, Nixon goes to inauguration on January 20th. And then I think the news conference for Lombardi, I thought it was February 6th, but today's date, I think it was February 6th. It might have been earlier, but it's right in that time frame. And then the Washington Senators named Ted Williams the manager. So as soon as this guy says to Sonny, he's like, hey, my 2 favorite, he goes, I got a good Ted Williams story for you. I'm like, okay, this is great, because I'm standing right there. I'm like, okay, this is great. He goes, yeah, so when Ted comes to Washington, I'm living in a neighborhood, nice neighborhood, outside of D.C., and there's a knock at the door. And my wife comes back to where I am and said, hey, there's a big tall guy out at the front door. Said he's asking for you. do you know who it is? Like, Ted Williams? Or like, I think she said his name. So he goes to the front door. There's Ted Williams. Ted Williams, Sonny Jurgensen's front door, 1969. So Sonny's like, Ted, what can I do for you? Come on in. What can I do for you? He goes, well, Sonny, son of a bitch. Yeah, his language. He's like, yeah, son of a gun. Everybody's telling me if anybody's in the know about where to live, it's you. So what do you think? Where should I live? I'm moving to DC. I'm going to be the Senator's manager. So everybody said, come see you. And so Sonny Jurgensen is telling that story that Ted Williams finds his address and comes, knocks on his door and asks him where to live. That blows me away. I'm hearing Sonny Jurgensen tell stories about Ted Williams. So they are the big three, Nixon coming in the White House, Lombardi, the new coach of the Washington Redskins, and Ted Williams. Well, we know what happens with Nixon. Lombardi passes away with cancer, and it's not long after Ted Williams. He turns the Senators around a little bit, then eventually, because just overall lack of attendance, they moved to Texas and become the Rangers. So anyway, I'm telling all these stories from that era. Now I've been about 50 minutes now into this, telling stories. Now I do want to sort of say some things about aging, about pop culture, I guess, to some degree, growing up in America, what's been lost, how things. I do a lot of these old man, get off my lawn kind of things. Although, I say it over and over. I'm coaching college baseball all day. I'm with 18, 19, 20-year-old kids every day, and I love them. And it keeps you young because when you coach, you're always around the youngest generation. And I'm seeing a change in kids where they seem to get more old school, kind of more, not so much just conservative, probably some of that too. But they're, I just have well-mannered kids, yes, sir, no, sir. I mean, they're good kids. They're really, really good kids. Where 10 years ago, I thought things were getting kind of sketchy, but they don't have a lot of connection, I think, to the past at all. They really don't. And so when I was growing up, I'll be fair. I'm trying to be fair to the fact. I knew who Sid Luckman was. I certainly knew who Sammy Ball was. I knew all about Babe Ruth, who was born today, as was in 1895. Today is the birthday of Babe Ruth. It's also the birthday of Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan was born on this day in 1911. So February 6th is kind of a famous day for a couple of births there, Babe Ruth and Ronald Reagan. But I did grow up in a time of, this is kind of old saw, but you hear it over and over. We literally had 3 stations. We had a local CBS, ABC, and NBC affiliate, and you might have a PBS, or public broadcasting. You had a UHF channel nearby for us. And so Richmond we had 6, 8, 12. 6 was CBS, 8 was ABC, 12 was NBC. And I think 23 was like the education network, whatever, like, UHF, which we never watched because you'd have to move the rabbit ears or antenna around. So when you had that limited amount of access to things or information, we all had a common culture. I say it over and over, but it's a lot of truth to that. So I don't know if it's any different today with kids and who they look up to. One thing is clear. Everybody can be an influencer. I'm on a podcast right now. I've talked about this in shows. There's something lost in, I always wanted a radio career. I don't think I have a great radio voice or anything like that. I was interested in talk radio because you get to exchange ideas, et cetera. So I went to a guy years ago who's influential in my life or inspirational, influential. He was a radio guy. And I approached him and said I wanted to be on the air, and he started letting me be on the air. And I learned about radio sort of from the inside. So like when I saw the movie with Howard Stern, Private Parts, like a lot of what he went through as a not so good guy, having to change the different types of radio stations he was at and all the things he had to learn. Same story my friend told me. It's like you get in behind a microphone in a booth and you either figure out you have it or you don't. But you figure out over time what works, what doesn't. It is something that it's like flight, I guess. It's like being an aviator. It takes a certain amount of flight time before you can really figure things out. But one thing about radio and being in that then, you had to get a job. You had to go convince somebody that you were going to be able to sell advertising, that if you're on the air, there's going to be listenership. And then those who want to advertise are going to go to the advertising salespeople and say, yep, I want to be on that show. because people listen. The other thing my friend pointed out to me is an older guy doing talk radio, because a lot of people look at my numbers and think, compared to the FM side, I'm not doing as well. I sell 5 times as much advertising. Why? Because the 54-year-old demographic that listens to him doing political talk radio actually have money. Over on the FM side, 18-year-old kids, yeah, they might be listening all the time to heavy metal or whatever the hell the genre is, whatever music they're doing. They may be listening, but they don't have any money, and they don't spend money, certainly not for the people that have the money to advertise. So you learn all those things, but you have to get a job. So today we can get out, do what I'm doing, and I saw something the other day. There's like 43 million people podcast, like 43 million. But like 95% never do a third show. Like people that come out with a podcast, the percentage that do 20 is like astronomically low. I was watching a guy talk about this the other day. So a lot of people try it. So this is really free market, probably on steroids. This is as free market as it gets. Everybody gets a voice. But where I'm going with this with my thing with Sonny Jurgensen, my tags are SJ9. As a kid, he was a figure to me that meant the world to me. And then I think what a lot of the guys were talking about today that was so crazy unique about him is he kept resurrecting his stardom in my eyes in other fields. So like when he retires at 40, I'm 12. He's out of the game. I'm 12 years old. I'm heartbroken. He's out. Well, then I look up, he's on CBS. I'm like, okay. I'm still getting to see Sonny. I'm still getting to see my hero. Now he's in the booth. Then he goes on to radio. And who's he on radio with? Sam Huff, who I also loved. I loved Sam Huff. So now I got 2 of my childhood heroes who both come to Washington in 1964 that now happen to end up in the same booth. And I got something I want to grab here real quick. I'm always on eBay. What can I find? What can I find? What can I find? And I find this. And I hope the person that I purchased this from is probably not watching. I mean, I don't guess it matters, but this is a Super Bowl 26 ball. 1991 season. It is January 26, 1992, Redskins-Bills. Last time the Washington Redskins won the Super Bowl. And I see this ball on sale. And it's not for like a really huge amount of money. And it's got a faint Sonny Jurgensen autograph on it. And I'm like, I'm on it. It's got Sonny's autograph on it. It looks legit. I got 1 million of his autographs. It looks legit. I'm getting it. And I get it. I'm like, there's a second signature on here. There's something else on here. And then as I look closer and closer, that right there, I do a comparison. It's Frank Herzog. Who's not on here is Sam Huff. But I'm wondering, I don't know. I got no way to know. If Frank Herzog ever sees this, please, Frank, reach out if you could. By the way, I love Frank Herzog. I mean, you can't measure how much I love him as a radio guy, just a human being, because I heard him today talk about Sonny. So it's Sonny, Frank, and Sam. That's how everybody referred to it. Sonny, Frank, and Sam. Sonny, Frank, and Sam. Started in 1981. So during the Joe Gibbs era, first scope, Joe Gibbs 1.0, 81 to 92, it's those 3 guys in the booth. And I find this ball, and I'm thinking, they look legit. I think the autograph, for the price I paid for it, was worth it. I'm not giving it to anybody else. I'm not selling it. I'm keeping this because it means the world to me to think that maybe this pin reached the ball with these 2 gentlemen signing. And I'm wondering, I don't know, maybe after the game, somebody put a bunch of the game balls, of that, they make tons of the balls. I got other ones up here in boxes that represent the ball that was used as a gameplay ball in the Super Bowl. But I'm wondering, is it possible? Because I think I got another one right here. I do. So this is another one. This is one not signed, but you also see the Super Bowl 26 stamp on it. You see Buffalo and Washington. So I got footballs all over the place. I got Redskin balls, different seasons, and Super Bowl balls. So I'm wondering, were they at the game and somebody threw some footballs, boxes? And hey, Frank, Sonny, when you get a chance, sign some balls. They're going to go out to people. They're going to whatever. And then through the years, this has ended up with me. But this was a common thing. Any of you people, and I hope this gets to people that grew up with the same experience as being a Redskin fan during that era. if you were a Redskin fan, the TV was off on volume. You turned the volume down. You muted it, whatever you want to call it, and you listened to the radio. Now, the tricky part was always a 7-second delay. One of the first things I learned in radio is we're on a 7-second delay. So working at the station I worked at in Norfolk, Virginia, I used to remind the guys in the crew, cut it off during game day, because a TV broadcast can be on delay. Sometimes it's pretty close to on time. But when we were back at the radio station I worked at, getting the raw feed of the radio broadcast, the station was running, because of talk radio during the day, live talk radio, we were constantly running on a 7-second delay, because if anybody drops the word, the FCC says no, you just cut the show, boom. So if you've ever listened to talk radio and a person's talking as them, and then all of a sudden you hear it pick back up, somebody said something, and then so you had a kill switch. So when you're doing radio and somebody, they said the wrong word, you hit that, then you go to real time, and then slowly that machinery starts to generate back up the 7-second gap. So I would call sometimes when I was living in Virginia Beach, and I would say, hey, could y'all kill the switch today for me? Because then I could sync up the TV clearly with the radio. Because I was not, there's some people I really, Pat Summerall and John Madden and all I mentioned, I loved them, but I wanted to hear Sonny, Frank, and Sam. So there's a whole group of people out there that I know had that same experience. And Frank Herzog was famous for his call. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. I heard it a million times. 91 season, of course, we have a 14-2 and win the last Super Bowl. The radio call during the 5-touchdown second quarter in Super Bowl 22 against the Broncos was, crazy. 18 plays, 5 touchdowns. So there's all these memories. So with Sonny, I went from Sonny the player to Sonny on CBS to Sonny radio. And they were talking about today, Sonny's last year doing radio was 2018. 2018. So he went all of that time. Towards the end, he would only do home games. He started with Sam Huff and Frank Herzog in the booth. He finished with Chris Cooley, which I think is amazing because Herzog talked about that today. Sonny was a huge fan of Chris Cooley, the player. And then they got to be buddies when he was a player. And Cooley's just a brain. Cooley's a super smart guy that played tight end during the Sean Taylor, LeVar Arrington era, there in the mid-2000s. He was drafted at the same time as Sean Taylor. Taylor, of course, 5 overall, and Cooley was a 3rd rounder. So they're doing these shows together at the end of Sonny's radio broadcast career with a kid. This is Cooley. So if he's a rookie in 2004, drop back 20, was he born in the 80s? Yeah, he's born in the 80s. Sonny Jurgensen's, when he's born, is already in a radio booth doing that second half of his career. So a lot of people brought up today, and it's true, Sonny Jurgensen's literally been an institution in Washington for 62 years. He can't, to this point, he died, and it's going to continue. It's going to continue past his death. He'll always be that guy. So the things I'm lucky to say is I saw him in person more than once and got autographs. And in his presence, he was very, very kind to me, which means a lot. When your favorite player, you have a moment with him, it's great. And so I had that. He waved at me at that game. I saw him and Lombardi together. I was at that first RFK game. And I'm not trying to match to other people. Look at how blessed I've been. My dad, I have that warm memory of him being instrumental in me going to my first game, 1968, DC Stadium, second game Lombardi, what I'm talking about. Then seeing Sonny on TV, getting to see that stretch out over time. Then hearing him on the radio for all those years. And especially, the time he had with Frank and Sam. And with Larry Michael. Larry Michael was Sam as well. And I got a chance to meet Larry Michael at some events. Very, very nice guy, too. He was always really, really nice when I met him. But like I said, when I go to the thing the other year with my buddy and I meet J.P. Finley and I get to see Rick Walker and I get to see Brian Mitchell, I don't think it's all lost, but Rick Walker talked about that today. He talked about it today, how special it was when he played for the Redskins in the early 80s and was on that first Super Bowl winning team, and what Sonny meant, but also what Bobby Mitchell meant, what Charlie Taylor, who was one of the wide receiver coaches, how those guys from that era who were Hall of Famers, one of the pictures that you're going to see too is me standing in Canton in the Hall of Fame. It's a shot of me. Sonny's above me, Bobby Mitchell's beside me, Charlie Taylor's beside me. Because of when they went into the Hall of Fame, their bust in Canton are all like right around each other. That meant the world to me, folks. I went to Canton and I'm like, Sonny, there's Bobby Mitchell. I got the Bobby Mitchell 49 up here for when he passed. I got Bobby Mitchell's autograph. So I love Bobby Mitchell, Charlie Taylor. Met Roy Jefferson one time at a fan event. What a night. And then as far as I know, he's still doing okay. He's got to be getting up in years as well. All these guys are getting older, clearly, and now Sonny's passed away. Which brings me to, again, where I'm trying to kind of go with this question. Have we lost something? One thing I do think that's been brought out, I think it's been brought up. I did a show the other day and I was mentioning how much, how big a Elvis-like of type of, well, Elvis is another person though. I'm even bringing it, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, the Rat Pack, Sammy Davis, all the people that we might have idolized, looked up to, or at least recognized as A-list celebrity types. What if we knew everything about them? And that's the thing about Mantle. Mantle had all the issues off the field, the infidelity, the drinking, all the different things that were going on, but we didn't know it. And so so many kids looked up to a Mickey Mantle as this particular type of figure, not knowing that he, like all of us, have feet of clay, that all of us, only by the grace of God, that we make it through the day kind of thing. And certainly he found God late in his life. And, he went through a kind of a transformation, but it's a sad story. If you've ever seen the interview he did with Costas talking about when he was in the Betty Ford clinic, again, pretty much on the advice and counsel and help of Pat Summerall. So one of the things they asked him to do was write a letter to his dad. So his dad dies when he's 20. And all the men in his family had gone down with Hodgkin's disease, I guess, lymphoma. I don't know exactly, but they had a running thing with many of his family members never seeing their 40th birthday. And so he thinks he's going to die too. All the Mantles die young, all the males die young, and his father dies. And the guy hits 536 home runs and has this great Hall of Fame career and spends the rest of his life thinking he let his dad down. He could have been better. And I don't think that's hyperbole. There's a lot of people that said he not injured his knee in the 51 series, running to the fly ball that at the last second DiMaggio called, and he hit, famously a drain, whatever it is in the outfield. He caught his spike, blew his knee up. Yogi Berra famously said, I heard it from the infield. All these people tell this horrific story of his injuring his knee. And anyone from the era will say that no one ran like Mickey Mantle. No one ran like Mickey Mantle. So there are guys that say if he had been healthy and not had that injury and not maybe lived the life he did off the field, he might have hit 800 home runs. Who knows? He hit 536. He only ended up playing and I say only 18 years. Look at what Mays did. Yastrzemski played 23. I think Mays played 24. Aaron played 20 plus years. If Mantle plays 20 plus with 536 home runs, and many of them are far healthier, God knows what he would have been. There's a lot of people that think the raw ability. But when you see him on this interview he did years ago before his passing with Costas, he has all these demons that he's battling about, I should have been better. I never was as good as I should have been. And I owed my dad more. All people go through these things at that level. That was one of the things that one of the guys said about Jurgensen today too. They were like, he was the least arrogant guy I ever saw. Like he just never big leagued a fan. And something else I want to say about somebody close to this area. I mention this a lot. I know I'm on the kick. Secretariat's the greatest athlete of all time because he was born 12 miles from me. But yeah, we've had some pretty good athletes come out of Virginia. And one thing I'll never forget is in that 99 meeting that I had with Sonny to get stuff autographed. In that same one where I went up and he told the Ted Williams story. So in 99, it's the same year that Lawrence Taylor makes the movie Any Given Sunday with him and Jim Brown. So in 2013, when the NFL Network ranks the top 100 players of all time, 1 is Jerry Rice, 2 is Jim Brown, 3 is Lawrence Taylor. So in that movie, and number 6 was Johnny Unitas, who's also in Any Given Sunday. He's also in the movie playing one of the coaches. So they got 2, 3, and 6 in the same movie. But when you see LT in that movie, he's still got it together. And he's like 40 years old then doing that movie. You know, he's still put together. So that's the same time frame I see him. And when I get there to see Sonny, he's like supposed to break the curtain at 3 p.m. to come out and sign. So I'm standing there. And I look over to my left, to my left over here, and there's Lawrence Taylor signing. And I'll never forget, I thought, that's Lawrence Taylor. Oh my God. I saw him on film. I saw him move at the speed he did, and I saw him throw offensive linemen around. And what shocked me is I'm like, he's that big? Holy cow. If that's a linebacker that looks his size that I know could run a 4.5 and change, like that's him. Wow. I'm looking over. There's LT. Long line of people getting autographs. Sonny breaks the curtain. So I want to say this in respect to LT on the passing of Sonny Jurgensen. Well, I'll never forget is he excused himself from the people coming. He kind of does this number. Give me 1 second. And he gets over and he comes over, handshakes Sonny, pulls him in for a hug. And I thought that's pretty classy. One was born in 34. The other was born in 59. One finished playing in 74. The other one started playing in 81. They both went to school in North Carolina. One's from North Carolina. One's from Williamsburg, Virginia. They didn't play in the same era, but I know this. When Sonny was doing radio, he had to have a lot of contact with LT. I'm sure they ran in the same circles. But that was another one of those moments of growing up in America. I'm like, here, I'm here to see my favorite player, Wilmington, North Carolina, Michael Jordan, Meadowlark Lemon, Roman Gabriel, all came out of Wilmington. Roman Gabriel, New Hanover, same high school as Sonny Jurgensen. He broke all of Jurgensen's record, went to NC State. He passed away, last year? So I'm thinking about him growing up in America, and that guy right there from Virginia might be the greatest defensive player of all time. And here comes my hero through the curtain. He just gave him a lot of respect. Heartwarming. I was like, that only in America. You know, I'm thinking Sonny Jurgensen breaks the curtain and LT goes over and hugs him. I was like, that's pretty cool. I thought it meant a lot to me. It was like, yeah, Lawrence Taylor, he certainly had his ups and downs. He had his off the field stuff, and everybody knows all the stories of LT. But the way he treats Joe Theismann too, the way they kid around about that leg break, they kid around about it. But I thought one of the most, in a man moment, one of the most moving things I ever saw is when they did that, the NFL Network, A Football Life about Theismann, and they go down to RFK and they're on the field, and Theismann's laughing about the phone call where Taylor said, well, you all right? And he goes, man, you broke my leg in half, 2 bones, and he goes, well, I don't ever half-ass anything. If I'm going to do something, something like that, making fun of, of the situation. And then LT laughs and says, well, it wasn't like you were dead. Like, I don't know why. It's almost like, why were you whining about this kind of thing? Because we broke my leg, and they're kind of laughing about it. And then Taylor does this. He looks at it. And what's interesting in that video, too, is just how much bigger Lawrence Taylor is than Theismann. Theismann's 6 feet. He's not a big quarterback. But you're like looking like, damn, that's a huge dude to be standing beside Theismann. But then he says that thing that all men want to hear, I think, that have ever played on a sports field. He goes, Joe, I felt bad, though, because I respected you so much. I didn't want you to go out that way. It certainly wasn't intentional. But it was that moment when he goes, Joe, I respected you so much. And he meant it. And I could tell it meant the world to Theismann. Because look, if you're standing there, Theismann, you won a Super Bowl, you lost the Super Bowl, you got an MVP, you had a great career. You did have a great career. I think he's borderline Hall of Fame. I hope one day he gets in. I don't know that he will, but I like Theismann a lot. Theismann's one of my favorite players of all time, big time. I loved him at Notre Dame, loved him with the Redskins. But to be in that moment and never have Lawrence Taylor look you in the eye and say, Lawrence Taylor, say, I respected you that much. It doesn't get any better than that. If Lawrence Taylor respected you as an offensive player in the same game, in this game of football, that's pretty huge. So there we are. I know I got to wind down at some time. I'm just going on and on. I do think about a lot with Sonny, especially in his past and the missed opportunities. He's with the Eagles. Van Brocklin wins the NFL championship in 1960 with him as a backup. He's a drafted 4th rounder in 1957. So if you look at his stats, he pretty much sits the bench 57, 58, 59, and 60. He holes for field goals and extra points. He gets a little bit more passing time as a mop-up guy for 4 years. Then they give him the keys to the car in 61, which brings up a famous story of in the game against the college all-stars. They're the reigning NFL champs. The old game was you played the college all-stars with the best team in the NFL, even though it was college all-stars. That's really a mismatch. You're taking a bunch of 21-year-old kids, 22-year-old kids, and putting them against a team full of men that just won the NFL championship. But in that game, a guy is rushing Jurgensen straight on, just straight up in his face. And he goes behind his back and throws a rope. Pete Retzlaff, what was it? Retzlaff? Yeah, I think it's Retzlaff was Pete. I know he's a Hall of Famer wide receiver. He catches the ball on the fly. And I remember a guy making the commentary that was a writer in Philadelphia. He thought, oh my God, this is what we got. We went from Van Brocklin to, he said, Meadowlark Lemon. And I think there was that view of him. We've just won a championship. Maybe he doesn't take it. Yeah, Retzlaff. Maybe he doesn't take it as seriously as he should or something like that. But he does. And Didinger, but Ray Didinger, I think, was the writer that really love that guy. He's out of Philadelphia. He was the one that made that comment. That he also said in one of the documentaries on Jurgensen, when people say, well, he never won anything, why is he in the Hall of Fame? He was the one that, with the famous quote, well, did you ever see him play? Like, if you ever saw Jurgensen play, you knew you saw one of the greatest passers of all time. But anyway, the 61 season goes 10-4, I believe. They've gone to 14 games at that point. They go 10-4. And then it's a complete drop off. They win like 5 games in 62 and 63. And then he's out of there and on to Washington. So he goes from a championship team to, I think, a team that is naturally falling apart because of age. And he kind of catches the heat for it. Then he comes to Washington. It's been a carousel of coaches. They're still living with the fact that George Preston Marshall did not want to integrate the first black player. They drafted Ernie Davis. He said he'd never play for a racist like George Preston Marshall, so they trade for Bobby Mitchell. Bobby Mitchell doesn't have exactly the greatest time in his first couple of years there in Washington. Then they draft Charlie Taylor out of Arizona State. They get a Rookie of the Year. They take 2 natural running backs and turn them into split ends and flankers and become 2 Hall of Famers. So this whole idea of the West Coast offense and dumping the ball out, Sonny Jurgensen was handing the ball off 30, 40 yards down the field to running backs. That's what was happening. Jurgensen was way ahead of his time. He just was. I mean, you go back and watch the film, and a lot of guys today made this point. You can find it in the highlight films of Jurgensen. It's one of the most famous films of a highlight you'll ever see. There is a film of him in camp with the Redskins, and guys are the distance that you'd split out when you think about center guard to tackle and the tight end slot and how far a guy goes out to be a split end or flanker. It's pretty good ways off of the ball. So these guys are out on his flank to the left, and they're running go routes. They're just running up the field straight ahead. And Sonny is taking the ball from the ball boy and throwing the ball behind his back in a clothesline. Now, it's hard to pick up in the one famous film of him doing that. It's really kind of hard to pick up really what the distance is. Eyeballing it, it looks like he's throwing it 30 to 40 yards on a line behind his back to these people. That's what it looks like. I think it's probably in that range of 30 to 40 yards. And I asked my friend Tom House, the guy that's worked with a lot of NFL quarterbacks, I'm like, what's considered today an average arm for distance? He goes 58 yards. So if a guy can throw a ball 58 yards, it's considered like, and we use the tools in baseball, what's an average tool? It was a 90-mile-an-hour fastball. Now it's 94 is average. You're looking for 94 where you used to look for 90 in a prospect. But if a guy can throw a ball 58 yards, it's considered in the range of an average arm. The guy that gets to 65 and plus is an elite arm. It's above average arm, above 65 yards. Well, he's throwing the ball on a line 30, 35, 40 yards behind his back. That's on tape. The other thing I noticed about him as a kid is he would dribble a football. I always thought it was the neatest thing. When he came out and he was warming up, he would throw the point down, the ball would come right back. He would just play catch with himself, throwing the ball on the ground and catching it. I saw that, and you can see film of him doing that too. So he goes to that period of he leaves the Eagles as the Eagles are falling apart, comes to Washington. They're carrying a lot of baggage about not integrating the team earlier. coaching carousel. They bring in Otto Graham. Otto Graham says, we're going to have fun. He literally says, we're going to have fun. That's on one of the films you can see in the 66 season. And they do. They light the skies up with footballs. They have this 72-41 game against the Giants in 66, which is still a record for the most points scored in one game. But they're scoring 72 points, and the game was in question. I mean, during the game, they said Sam Huff would come to Jurgensen and say, keep scoring. He goes, Sam, like, when the hell are you going to stop these guys? You know, well, you just keep scoring. And they, of course, kicked a field goal with Charlie Gogolak in the closing moments to make it 72-41 because Ali Sherman had let Sam Huff go and pissed him off. And he goes, Sonny, go call time, or they called timeout on defense just to give the Redskins another chance to kick a field goal to rub it in even more. So that record-setting game is 1966. So you got 1966, 67 again. You got 1, 2, and 4 in the receiving. Charlie Taylor, Jerry Smith, Bobby Mitchell. 1, 2, 4. Jurgensen sets all these records. 68, Jurgensen's hurt most of the year. They have another, I think, 6 and 8 season, and then Lombardi comes in. What happens with Lombardi? He passes away. What happens to Jurgensen? They bring in George Allen. What does Allen do? Finds every reason to play Billy Kilmer. And again, I love Billy Kilmer. I always wanted Sonny to start. I understood the controversy. Billy Kilmer's the most stand-up guy in football history. Love him. He's there. I mean, what touches me as a Sonny Jurgensen fan is I recognize he was there to unveil his jersey when he retired. Billy Kilmer's got to be the most gracious guy on earth. I mean, and hey, it's their friendship. The fact that they were friends, I think, is heartwarming and wonderful. And I just love Billy Kilmer. I love Billy Kilmer. I love Billy Kilmer a lot as a Jurgensen fan because they were close and they looked out for each other. So God bless both of them. And I hope Billy Kilmer's doing really, really, really well. And I heard him today. And let me just check that real quick. I think he's got to be, I'm just trying to think of how old Billy Kilmer. He's got to be like 85-ish, I guess. Trying to think of his, or maybe he was born in 39. Let's see. Was Billy Kilmer? For some reason, 1939 sticks in my head. Let me see if that's right. Billy Kilmer, born, September 5th, 1939. So he will be, 87 this year? Yep, he's 86 right now, born in Topeka, Kansas. So God bless Billy Kilmer. Again, big fan. But he goes through the period where that 72 season coming out, and I think he put up better numbers in the summer than Kilmer and lost it and still didn't get the job. Then gets the job and then tears the Achilles tendon. Then in the Super Bowl, he can't be there for the Super Bowl to help Billy Kilmer. And then 73, 74, his going out swan song, is that the right term? But his going out greatest closing moment was he got to start against the Dolphins, the reigning world champions in Washington, and throws a touchdown with like 12 seconds left to win the game. He's on fire at the end of the game. There's a story that Jurgensen told, too, that during the Super Bowl, January of 73, Super Bowl 7, after the 72 season, he runs into Don Shula. And I mean, Don Shula was a head coach at 33 and had played in the league. He probably knew him as a player. I'm sure he knows Don Shula well. And Shula comes up to him and says, hey, Sonny, I know how hard you worked to be in this game. It would be a better game if you were in it. I really feel bad for you. And that's what Jurgensen said that Shula said. So he gets an opportunity 2 years later to basically play that same team. Because many people thought that if Jurgensen had been the quarterback in Super Bowl 7, we would have had a better chance to win. But I don't ever want to disparage Billy Kilmer in that. I think there was a lot of game planning issues that went on with that. I think that Allen just naturally tried to play games with, I want to win 3-2 and let the defense win the game. All that, I think, worked against them. There is a famous pass thrown in that game, too, that Kilmer had a wide open Jerry Smith and hit the crossbar. Now in 74, they moved the goalpost to the end line. At that time, it's on the front line. It's over the goal line. And he just barely hits the goalpost, the crossbar. And by doing that, it's not a completion. And then at some point in one of those drives near the end zone, he threw it in interception. I think it was right after that. But that was always another famous, oh gosh, if that had gone right, maybe we would have been in the game. But I guess what I'm saying is that Jurgensen as a kid was a hero that I had. Unlike, let's think about the kid today. If his hero is Tom Brady, I love Tom Brady. I'm not, but I'm saying if a kid, and my favorite player was in 9 Super Bowls and he won 6, or I'm sorry, 7 out of 10. I'm sorry, 7 out of 10. If you're Joe Montana, who I think is the greatest quarterback of all time, I'll always say Montana, but Montana got there 4 times, won all 4. If you're a fan of those guys, you pretty much got to see it happen for him. I was a fan of Sonny, and I never saw anything quite line up for him. But I loved him, and I did. I love Sonny Jurgensen and the interactions, the signatures, the history. One of the other pictures you're going to see is, and I want to do a shout out to a gentleman. I'll just say his name is Curtis. I'll just say that is with a background of doing helmet restoration. I'll just put it that way. I don't want to get too much of his, but anyway, we're both kind of natives of that area. And he helped me with, if you see in the pictures, you will see I have the 64 helmet with the feather over the top. And up here you see the cardinal color spear. There was a plum helmet he wore, 65 to 68. The cardinal helmet was, so if you see the difference, you see the plum jersey here. That's what they wore. It was a sand knit jersey. In 69, when Lombardi took over, he gave the contract to his brother-in-law with Rawlings. They opened the boxes and the jerseys were this color, and they went, oh my. The jersey's this color, the helmet is that color, the plum color. What are we going to do? So they stripped the decals and spray painted the helmets cardinal. So when they went to the lighter color was as a result of this. So when you see that helmet I have up here, I got the other one covered, but the one that's covered over here is the plum helmet you've seen in other shots. So the plum helmet, the color of that jersey right here, changed with the mistake on the jersey color. Then Lombardi, who always wanted the team to look more like the Packers, went to the gold helmet with the yellow helmet or gold helmet with the aura in the circle with the feather. I have 2 of those. I have a collection of, so I've got 64 with the feather over the top, the first helmet that Jurgensen wore with the Redskins, 65 to 68 plum, 69 cardinal with the spear. Then I have 2 R helmets because they wore it in 70 and 71. And Jurgensen went from an RK Riddell to a TK. So he went from kind of the box ear, more kind of square top, to the more rounded one. He wore that the second year. Then he wore the same TK in the new burgundy helmet with the Redskin with John Two Guns white calf on the side, which we've talked about. That decal on the Redskin helmet that we know and love, those of us that love it, is of an actual Native American. It is a Blackfoot Indian, John Two Guns white calf, who is the same image as on the Buffalo nickel. Okay, so anyway, Sonny wears that in 72, 73, and in 74, but then on a Rawlings helmet that he wore with the 1-bar mask for 1 year. So my buddy, I ran one of those down. I'm having to look around. I find the same model he wore. And my friend is basically like a body shop. Take the helmet apart, you sandblast it, you clean it up, you paint it, you decal it, and it looks like what he wore. So in that one picture I'll have posted by my producer as well, you will see that I have a collection of every helmet that Sonny Jurgensen wore for the Washington Redskins. So it's 64, 16K, that one. I got 7 helmets in that group and that's interesting because from 1974 to 1960, from 1964 to 1974, he wore all those different helmets, which brings up a point. That was one of the first exchanges I had with his friend. He had posted on his site, can you name the 2 players who wore all of the different decals on Redskin helmets? There were no decals until 58 when they put the feather over the top. There were no decals until then. What 2 players did that? And I wrote to him and I said, well, Charlie Taylor did, but there's also a third. And he was like, I wasn't aware. I said, Len Haas. You sure about that? I'm like, positive. So Len Haas was a rookie in 64. So what we're saying is they wore the feather, they wore spears, they wore the R, and they ended up with John Two Guns white calf on the side. There were three guys that did that. Sonny Jurgensen coming there in 64. Charlie Taylor was a rookie in 64. Now, there were guys that wore the feather and a spear, and then they were gone. And there were guys that maybe made it as far as the R, and then they were gone. But the only three players in Redskin history that wore the feather, wore the spear, wore the R, wore the Indian head were Sonny Jurgensen, Charlie Taylor, and Lynn Haas became a starting center in like week 6 of 1964. He was on that team. I thought about, well, what about Jerry Smith? Jerry Smith was a rookie in 65. So Jerry Smith just missed it. He missed the feather. He never wore the feather, but those three guys. So if you want to win you want to win a bet at a bar one night, you want to throw, hey, who are the three guys for the Redskins that wore all the different helmet decals? There's your answer. Okay. Closing, I never really got into it as deep as I guess I wanted to, is have we lost the heroes? This is a weird time for me, I guess, because the other thing I'm recognizing is I saw it with my parents. I was really, really blessed. My parents passed away, my dad at the age of 92, my mom at the age of 91. I don't know too many people that had parents live past 90, both of them. So, but what I noticed in my dad's last 10 years, he was kind of matter of fact about it. He was a tough guy. He was military, he was law enforcement, but big heart though. My dad could be emotionally moved pretty quick on some things, especially as he got older. But he was a tough guy. He grew up tough. He grew up poor. He grew up in a tobacco part of Virginia, working hard labor jobs and things like that. Best thing that ever happened is he got drafted in the Army during the Korean War, which got him off the farm and out into the world. And then he excelled at everything. They threw him into OCS. He graduated OCS at the top of his class, became an officer, went to state police school, and blah, blah, blah. But I noticed in the last 10 years, every time I'd call him, Dad, how you doing? Doing good, Jack. And I'll tell you what kind of man he was. I called him one time when there was a big snow. He was 88 that year, 88. And I said, Dad, you doing okay? How much snow did you get? We got about 16 inches. We got about 16 up in that part of Virginia. And he goes, I think your sister's a little upset with me. I was like, what's the matter? And he goes, well, I spent about 3 hours today out front with a snow shovel shoveling out the cars for your mom and myself. 3 hours at 88 out there moving snow. I'm like, okay. So I'm talking to my sister and I'm like, you shouldn't give him a hard time. She goes, he has no bit. I'm like, that's why he's 88. The reason he's 88 is he's going to pick up a shovel and go out there and shovel snow. She had him over one day at her house. She said, splitting wood with an axe, which he grew up doing at 83. He spent 4 hours out there one day with an axe. So anyway, I'm saying tough dude, but grew up in a different time. Grabbing a shovel and spending 3 or 4 hours at 88 out there moving snow is not anything he would have thought anything of. And I'm not a big guy. I'm lucky if I'm 5'9". He was like 6'2". So a big, strong guy, grew up on a farm, etc. But in those last 10 years that I would talk to him, every time I'd call him, like, how you doing? Doing good. Walk 3 miles a day, would do the stuff he did. You remember Jim Smith? And you remember, Bob Taylor? You remember different names? Yeah. He passed away. How old? 83, 86, 84, 80 something. He's going to funerals all the time. And then this is one of those things. If you get to a certain age, I don't feel any different. I'm 63 years of age. I don't feel any different. I, honest to God, don't feel any different when I was 25. I do not. I still do the same thing. I'm out on the field with the kids, throw, run, do around, move around. I don't, because I've been able to be lucky to keep being a kid, I guess. But I recognize it around me with the people that are passing every time. And it's just weird stuff. Like when Gene Hackman died, he was 95, but all I thought of was Hoosiers. I'm like, God, he did Hoosiers. But then I thought, 40 years ago, like 40 years have passed. He was a guy in his 50s and now he's a guy that's 95. When Sean Connery died, I'm like, but I tell you, the one I think rocked me the most years ago was Raquel Welch. I'm like, Raquel Welch was the ultimate woman. That was Raquel Welch, big, strong, beautiful woman. She died at 82. Jim Brown, there's another one when Jim Brown, they were in the movies together, right? But I'm like, Jim Brown can't die. He's Jim Brown, for God's sake. He's 87. Burt Reynolds died, I thought, relatively young at 82. So you're born into an era. You look at certain people that make up pop culture, whatever, and then they pass, and you're kind of like, oh shit, if they died, what world am I in now? Like everything's kind of changing. So that's happened with Sonny. And I knew it was coming. Like I said, at 91 years of age, every time he'd pass a birthday, I'm like, I remember a couple of years ago, I thought, is he going to make it to 90? He made it to 90. God bless him. I hope he, I hope he's still around. I hope he's doing well. Then he was 91. But as people pass 90, you just start thinking, how much longer, will they be around? And that's, again, what was interesting about Billy Kilmer, talking about having lunch with him 3 weeks ago, and now he's gone. I went through the same thing with my dad. I really did. Like, I saw him a week before he passed. And if you had told me he'd be gone in a week, I never would have believed it. And I'm not saying anything that everybody else listening to this hasn't gone through. It could be a grandparent, could be at some point when you were younger and it was an older person. People will not live forever, but when they go fast sometimes. And you can see them in a moment, and a week later, they're gone, because at that age, death can come upon you pretty quickly. And it's a lot to take in, even if you kind of expect it to come with people of age. But what am I saying here is, like, I guess I'm just going through something in large part about parts of my life will never be the same. That part I grew up with was Sonny Jurgensen's quarterback, Sonny Jurgensen on TV, Sonny Jurgensen on radio, and then it gets passed down. And I think it's a good thing in a sense. So I will say this in closing. I got to close here because I'm just rambling on. I think I'm thinking about so many different things about the effect of this. Like I say, one of the neat things for me in a something that's not nice, losing a favorite player growing up, is how many people have reached out to me today to say, hey, I'm thinking about you because I know it meant a lot. That man meant a lot to you. So as that kid that grew up in Bowling Green, Virginia, 70 miles from D.C., I went to see my first game in Washington in 1968, and who yelled out to Sonny Jurgensen when I was 7 and he waved at me. And I saw Vince Lombardi. I saw Vince Lombardi on the sideline with Sonny Jurgensen. And I went through the losses, and I went through the injuries, and I went through the difficulties of not seeing Sonny get that championship, but get the win against the Dolphins in 74, go to the booth. And God bless Joe Gibbs, because when Joe Gibbs comes in and wins those 3 Super Bowls, Sonny is a part of it. Charlie Taylor's a part of it. Charlie Taylor's one of our coaches. How much that meant to me as a fan, Charlie Taylor on the sideline. Richie Pettibone, defensive coordinator, who was on the Allen teams, who came from L.A. There's a family thing, and it's been destroyed. And I think it was destroyed by the last ownership, the ownership that I will not mention. I don't know. There's other fans out there. I'm sure you feel the same way. I always heard the same kind of vibe about Denver Bronco fans. It was always a big thing in Denver, greatest fans. But those that are listening to the sound of my voice that grew up in the DMV, District of Columbia, Maryland, Virginia, but if you grew up in that part of the world and you were connected to what happened in the 80s, even the 60s and 70s with the Sonny era going into the 80s, having Sonny in the booth with Sam Huff and Frank Herzog. Frank Herzog, if you ever hear this or see this, I can't tell you how much I love you, dude. And the fact that your name is on that football, how much it meant to me as a fan to have all that family connection. The guys from the 60s into the 70s. Well, Huff's last year was 69, but having those 2 gentlemen with Herzog, Frank Herzog, in the booth, calling the game, bringing home championships. I think of the players of the year, the guys that went 20 years, Darryl Green, one of my favorite players of all time, Monty Coleman, 16 years in the league. Raleigh McKenzie played 16 years in the league. Charles Mann, one of my favorite players of all time. Dexter Manley, God bless him. He's been to hell and back, and he's had a rough things, but the community always loved him. Everybody loved Dexter Manley. There was a community, there was a family, there was an aspect. This is what I miss. I only miss the name, because the name to me was connected to what we went through as fans, and Sonny Jurgensen was a big part of that. Sonny Jurgensen, I think, will always be the biggest name. A lot of those guys, John Riggins, some of those guys I heard today talking, Rick Walker. I mean, John Riggins is a Hall of Famer. Of course, a very large star in the whole game of football. But all these guys you hear, like, yeah, but Sonny was the biggest. Sonny was the biggest. Sonny was the biggest name in the town. He was for 6 decades. It's a lifetime of time that he spent as the biggest thing in Washington. And now he's gone. So in closing, Sonny Jurgensen, Christian Adolph Jurgensen III, loved you, man. You were my childhood hero. I'll never be able to really ever see the game the same way as I did in your time as a player and your time in the booth. That's already passed. I'd already kind of accepted that. With the name loss, and for the people that get bent out of shape about the political correctness, there's a lot of Native Americans that want the name back. You all know that. There are many, many people that were just as hurt who are certainly indigenous to this continent, and they were people that loved the name and loved the imagery. But I mean, so not even to fight that battle, we lost the name that was connected to this man. A matter of fact, when he went in with the retirement of his jersey 9, I think it was Larry Michael was the one that said that. No, it might have been Frank Herzog. One of the two of them said that when he was asked to come in to have his number retired, he goes, "One thing, I am not going in as a commander. I'm going in as a Redskin." You understand? They're like, "Oh yeah, no, but no, I'm not." Not that he's trying to poop on the new name, or it was just, I'm a Washington Redskin. That's what I played as. That's what I'll always be. And they were like, certainly recognize that everything that's going to be involved in this unveiling of your number being retired will be associated with the Washington Redskins. So we've lost the name. We've lost another icon of we lost Pat Fisher not long ago. Dave Butts has been dead a few years now, and he was an 80s player that won some of those Super Bowls. Rich Malott passed away. So we've lost people that were even in the 80s teams. Mel Kaufman's been dead for several years. Harold McClinton died not long after his career. We lost Jerry Smith back in the 80s to HIV and to AIDS. And was he ever loved in this town or loved in Washington, D.C.? So we've lost people. Bobby Mitchell, Charlie Taylor, all these people have passed away. And Sonny is now gone. But Sonny, I loved you. You were my favorite player. And so today starts another part of my life that guy that I thought so much of as a kid is not alive anymore. But always, I've got a million things of memorabilia around him because it reminds me of my childhood when things were not perfect, because I certainly had my time as a fan of Sonny Jurgensen where things weren't perfect for him or for the team or anything else. But it was worth the connection. It was worth the connection. And I do hope that young kids today have a similar experience, that they look as fans upon certain players that they can look up to. Again, I think there's too much exposure to people's lives anymore to really have the right kind of safe distance from people. They know too much. Everybody knows too much about everybody and everything else. But Christian Adolph, Sonny Jurgensen, born 1934, August 23rd, passed away today, February 6th, 2026. You'll be missed. But I do want to say what I heard JP Finley say today. Everybody that's really doing these kind of shows, celebrate his life. He's 91 years of age. It's not that we don't mourn a loss, but we certainly recognize he lived a full life. He lived a long time. He lived a long life. He was loved by many. He will be missed. There's no question. The man will be missed. But let's keep in perspective that the thing to do at this point right now is celebrate his life and what he meant to this community, what he meant to the National Football League, what he meant to many people he reached out and helped. And he did do a lot of good work for a lot of people. So God bless you, Sonny Jurgensen. God bless the memory of what this team has been and maybe again one day be. God bless RFK Stadium and all the people that attending games there. You know who you are. If you ever went to games there, you'll know how special it was. It was really special fans. I never felt that same thing in the new stadium. When it was Jack Kent Cook and on to FedEx or whatever other names it's had, I don't want to disparage. It's where I saw Sean Taylor play. Sean Taylor's still the greatest player I ever saw, and I got my 21 up here for him. I saw him play there. Saw LeVar Arrington play there, and I have good memories there, but it'll never be RFK. So I want the team back in the city, one thing, and I want the team back in that site. I hope they do some wonderful things in memorial to Sonny, especially in building the new stadium. I think we're going to try to open in 2030. So I'd like to see the name back. I'd like to see a lot of things back and try to catch that memory. But, I'm getting older too. And how much longer, will any of us be around to see, can you recreate the magic of the past? I don't know. Because I know in 1981 when Gibbs came in, I don't think anybody thought thought that what was coming was coming. So something could happen. Something could happen to change things around. But I do hope that going forward, the team can be used to reunite the city, reunite people. Hopefully a lot of things are moving in a better direction. I don't really see a lot of that, but I can always hope for it. Sonny Jurgensen, thank you for the memories. Thank you for being a wonderful man at the time that I approached you face to face to have things autographed. I appreciate the time you spent with me, talking with me, because we spent some time talking. He told some stories to me at that time. And, I can leave this life knowing that, I guess the things that are important to me is I can leave this life knowing I saw him play for Coach Lombardi in a win against the Cardinals. I saw him wave to me that day. I spent time with him having things autographed, and he made me feel special as a fan. So God bless you, Sonny Jurgensen. Love you. Love you, Sonny Jurgensen, and your family. I wish the best for your family. Again, I want to shout out to Billy Kilmer for all the neat things he did in Sonny Jurgensen's life and the fact that he was such a good friend. Hearing Frank Herzog's voice today meant a lot. Again, want to thank the shows that I watched today, what it meant to me. J.P. Finley, Brian Mitchell. Hearing Rick Doc Walker today. God bless him. Think the world of him. Thank you all the fans. If you leave some comments, please leave comments if you had connection with Jurgensen or anybody else. Please leave connections or comments relative to other sports figures in your life that meant the world to you and how that's affected your life. Thank you all. God bless you all. Look forward to doing a show again real soon. This has been More to Consider. Please like, share, subscribe, leave some comments. Thanks. God bless. Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. If you like the show, subscribe and hit your notification button to get an update when we post another episode. See you soon.